Hello and welcome to a very special episode of, I think we're calling this, or have called it in the past, I'd have to actually do research, coordination over reaction. It's been a while since we've done this, and it has certainly been a while since I've been joined here in video form by my good friend, longtime co-host of the Five Heart podcast, and a hell of a model American, and that is Haas Reuter. Haas, what's going on, brother?
Not too much, Greg. How are you?
Well, you know, it always seems to be Minnesota, doesn't it? That brings us to these wild and wacky post-game reactions.
Yeah, I think Minnesota's become our own personal Waterloo, to borrow a phrase from Napoleon. I mean, what was that, 6 years ago, where you and I basically just bared our souls?
Yeah, that was it. It was a Saturday night.
Yep, Saturday night.
We jumped on, and that was – here we are. And it's – I remember – it's Groundhog's Day.
I mean, like, it's Minnesota. We invent more ways to lose than Steven Spielberg writes movies. There's got to be a light at the end of the tunnel, though.
We're going to talk about it. I got to say, most of the people who watch the show live or listen to the podcast, either live Wednesday night or listen to the show on Thursday on game day, know that I was coming to the game late. I had DVR'd. I had a work function at 6, so I got home as realistically quick as I could. Changed out of my suit and sat down, ready to go. And of course, I think as soon as I turned on the TV, it was already on the channel. So I think they were just heading to halftime, and I saw, 3-0. I saw the score quickly, but what I saw was Minnesota catching the ball in the end zone. I'm like, oh crap. Come to find out, as I got to it, that was the interception at the end of the first half. Not the last turnover, unfortunately, that Nebraska would have, but nope. The DVR, I thought that the TV was turned on to the right channel. Apparently, it was just turning on for the temporary basis of the recording. So, we get to the end of the game, and Nebraska has just turned the ball over again. It's a tie game, and Minnesota has used their timeout to stop the clock. Nebraska used their timeout to try to ice the kicker, and they're coming back onto the field, and the recording stopped. And I frantically went back to the TV because, if it's on the channel, you can just rewind through the live TV and find it. No, it was off the channel. So I immediately thought, well, obviously Nebraska won in overtime. And then I believe it was John Dam Johnston from the coordination. I say Twitter, but X or whatever it is. He said, nope.
Twitter.
That's always going to be Twitter. He said, nope, they're still they're playing in 13th overtime. That was sometime Friday morning. And he was at the game. But, all jokes aside, to borrow a phrase from baseball, Minnesota walked it off on Nebraska 13-10, scoring the last 10 points of the game in the final 4 minutes, something like that. I mean, it was – we're gonna break it down, which is great because you have thoughts. But when we talked on Friday, you used the term gutted.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a tough – that was – for different reasons, that was as painful to watch for me as I want to say it was 2010. It was Taylor Martinez era. 2010, the game down at College Station, where we lost 9-7 or something like that, and I was gone that night. It was a primetime game. I was gone from home. Again, DVR'd it, stayed up till 3 a.m. to finish watching the game just to have that ending. That was how this Minnesota game, kicking off the season, the beginning of the Matt Rule era, it was just, man, I felt like I got kicked in the nuts.
That's an apropos description. Just a groin kick, straight on from one of the old school straight on field goal kickers of the 70s. when they wouldn't even line up at an angle. They were just straight back from the holder. But there was a part of me that when I realized that kick was going through, where as deflated and crushed as I was, I just had the thought of, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change my opinion of Matt Rule. It doesn't change the trajectory of the rebuild, the duration of the rebuild. It was a really game effort when you consider all the different factors that were at play. It also was a situation where it was truly a game that we had control of until the end, as opposed to a Scott Frost Lynn, a loss that felt like a win, where we'd score a cheap touchdown late to make the game look closer than it actually was. And that happened up in Minnesota 2 years ago. We were down 30 to 16 with 3 minutes left. We score a touchdown to Oliver Martin to make it look closer than it was at 30-23. So there's a lot to be encouraged by. There's a lot that, I think anytime that, regardless of who the head coach is, there's a lot that also, you should question. You should have some healthy skepticism about a few things. It doesn't mean that the hire's a failure by any means. Just like, if we would have won last night, it doesn't mean that Matt Rule's going to, win 3 national championships in 4 years. It's just one of those things where you take the good with the bad, and you also evaluate everything as objectively as you can, which I know is very difficult for us as fans. Fan is short for fanatic, as much as I hate that expression. There's plenty of good, there's plenty of bad. There's stuff that we could build upon our strengths, and then there's areas that are a little bit more weaknesses right now that we need to improve those, and namely that is the passing game.
I wanted to be snarky. I so wanted to be a smart shirt and be like, what passing game?
Dude, I felt like it was 2002 and I was watching Jamal Lord. I'll be honest.
My thing is, and I said this in the offseason, I don't ever want the quarterback to be the leading rusher.
No.
That's not a good foundation.
They're a distributor.
Yeah.
They're a nice – their running ability should solely exist to pick you up first downs, touchdowns in the red zone, in short yardage situations. On third down, you run the quarterback to pick up, a yard or two. But when you're pulling out, like, we like to run that kind of jet it's a jet sweep motion. It's more of an escort motion with an H-back or a tight end. We ran a lot with Chancellor Brewington back in 2021. Adrian Martinez would keep it, fake it to the back. Brewington would come in motion around to lead. We ran that yesterday on about a 3rd and 3. We pulled that out of the bag. Picked up the first down. It was efficient, is what we had to do. But when you're running essentially quarterback power in that situation and you're using your quarterback as your bell cow, you can't help but feel like you're in for a long season. I mean, It kind of felt like it was 2018 all over again, watching Adrian Martinez rip up Colorado, and every time Jeff Sims is getting tackled around the knees,
you get
sitting there holding their breath, just waiting for him to take a little bit longer than everybody else to get up off the turf. So that's where it's like, if we're going to have to rely on that quarterback run game as the focal point of our offense, chances are Sims will get hurt at some point this season, and we'll be tasked with starting Chuba Purdy or, Heinrich Harburg. So that's an area that I'm very concerned with on how can we get the I-back running game, up and running. No pun intended.
Well played. We saw some Ramir Johnson last night. We saw some Gabe Ervin Jr. There were some questions of why didn't we see Gabe Ervin Jr. sooner. I think, one faithful viewer / listener, friend at the show, Josh, said, I don't think he played the entire first quarter, which is odd for someone who was named the starter. Now, I'm not here to speculate or ask you for inside information. I don't know if you still know people inside the department, but, like the questions of were there some team rule violations, some suspensions, things like that. But when Gabe Ervin got going, we saw a lot of promise. And I know everybody's going to want to talk about and blame the loss. People are going to want to blame the loss on a few things. They're going to want to blame the loss on the could have been a touchdown by Gabe Ervin, where
the 27-yard run.
No, the one up the middle.
Oh no, yeah,
right up the middle, where he, it was right there, and was the elbow down? We don't know. They're going to blame the no call false start on the touchdown by Minnesota. They are going to blame the turnovers. But and I have my biggest, I'm going to save this for later in the show, my biggest area of not concern, but my biggest where I'm pointing the finger this week. We'll say that for a little bit later. But I thought that Gabe Ervin Jr. did deliver on what he was asked to do.
Yeah, I felt like he did too. He got no favors from the offensive line. And
which we expected.
Which we expected. And there were moments that they looked serviceable. It wasn't like it was an abject disaster. It didn't look like it was 2022 with Mark Whipple calling the plays. So there were some moments where it looked like, they were getting a good push up front, getting good vertical displacement off the line of scrimmage. But for what Gabe Ervin was asked to do and what he accomplished, kind of leads into something that I've really wanted to talk about, ever since we were texting earlier on Friday, about how there is a discussion to be had on offense between the strategy that we've selected on what we think is best to win football games and the tactical application of it, of how we choose to go about it. That I think is something that we're going to see emerge game by game, and I hope it looks different and it's come into clearer view by game 12 than in game 1. But we've decided as a strategy, as a staff, and it's kind of rules identity, that we want to be physical and we want to own the line of scrimmage, and that starts with running the football. That's great. I believe in that wholeheartedly. I'm a reformed person that used to mock run the damn ball guy. I am him now. It's like Nietzsche said, be careful when you fight monsters. You end up becoming one yourself. I own a shirt that says run the damn ball now.
I'm not surprised.
In this conference, you have to be able to run the damn ball. I mean, I could get into my whole philosophy and belief on the differences between the Big Ten conference and the Big 12 conference, but that's another podcast. Maybe if there's time tonight, we'll discuss it. But what it comes down to is we want to run the football. We want to be physical. Do we want to do that with an outside perimeter running game that emphasizes sweeps, wide zone, quarterback runs, jet sweeps, reverses, option plays, stuff like that? Or do we want to be – so think of like the San Francisco 49ers and kind of how they like to run their running backs and get their quarterbacks out on the edge with the option to run or throw. And then compare that to somebody like the Tennessee Titans that are going to want to try to control between the tackles with Derrick Henry as a battering ram and just hit body blow after body blow and just attack you north-south between the A gaps and the B gaps. So – there's different tactical applications to achieve that strategy. We looked a little bit disjointed and disorganized yesterday in what our idea was to do that, because you saw us try to run some isolation plays with Barrett Liebentritt in at fullback. And then you saw us get into some bunch formations and try to run toss. You saw the escort motion with Fedoni, and we were trying to run wide zone or toss. And then you see us running quarterback power. And you also see us just running, pure zone read or bash quarterback counter, which Rule pointed out in the post-game press conference. It's great to be multiple, but at the same time, it just looked like we needed to find something and start to really kind of build, like identify what it is as our strength and build upon that strength. And that's hard to do in game. So hopefully it's more on a week-to-week basis that we can build upon that. Because I think that disjointed nature of how the offense was called yesterday never allowed us to get into a really good flow. You had your hand raised?
Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you. The old phrase comes to mind: "Jack of all trades, master of none."
Yeah, yes,
and most of the teams that Nebraska is going to go up against have an identity.
Yeah, and the Big Ten is an identity league.
It is, by and large, most of the schools have been doing it the same way for years, decades. I mean, it's, for there you used to be the Nebraska way. I mean, Nebraska used to have an identity, and Nebraska has not had an identity 20 years.
Yeah, 20 years, I'd say.
And that's not, folks, that's not us like living in the past. It's just fact.
And what coincides with that for 20 years? Our ability to be one of the most turnover prone teams in the country. And I think there's something to be said, and it might be a little esoteric, but there's something to be said about that lack of identity and not taking care of the football.
Yeah.
Because there's kind of this jack of all trades, master of none. When in the Tom Osborne offense, Nebraska played a medley of tunes in the running game. We ran the ball in all different ways. We had an NFL pro-style tailback run game, supplemented with the option, a fullback run game, and then later into the 90s, a shotgun quarterback running game. Well, when, it all was based on development, development of the offensive line, body type, strength and conditioning, good recruiting, all paired together. Right now, we're kind of at a point where less might be more, having that identity. And I hate to really invoke this as a reference that maybe we should model it after, but take Iowa or Wisconsin, for example. They're going to run inside zone. They're going to run outside zone. They're going to run power, and they might have a few, kind of quote unquote exotic runs, a counter or, something, as a change up, but they're going to do it, and they're going to do it well. And you're going to get sick and tired of seeing it, but it's going to be effective. Right now, it just felt like the only reliable thing that we had going for us on offense was put the ball in Jeff Sims' hands. And as we discussed before we began recording, that just isn't a winning strategy when you're exposing the guy who's supposed to be the entire distributor of your offense that makes it go. When you're exposing him to that many hits, I think he had 17 carries. Does that sound right?
I mean, I can double check, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think it was 17 carries. That's a lot of hits. And that's not counting hits that he's taken in the passing game after he releases the ball.
Yeah. Let me see here. I get you that information there, sir. Maybe, maybe not. Final stats. Here we are. We have let's see, rushing 19.
Okay.
For 19 carries for 117, or I'm sorry, a net of 91 yards. So
yeah, I mean, that's a lot of opportunities to expose them to injury. And we haven't had a quarterback since Tanner Lee that started every single game in a season.
So here's my issue. Yes, Jeff Sims gives you another element. And I think that's all a mobile quarterback should be, is an added element, a wrinkle. But they should not be relied upon to be the bulk of your rushing game. 19 carries, again, yes, throw in some damn words, some sacks, some yards for loss, but 19 times he was brought down with ball in hand, 91 yards, 4.1 yard average yards per rush. Gabe Ervin Jr., 7 carries, 55 yards, had a long run of 27 and averaged 7.9.
If you swap those two stat lines, if it was Ervin was 17 for 91,
yep,
I'm willing to bet that we win the game.
Yep.
So the importance of an I-back centric running game is it opens up the rest of your offense because your quarterback is able to distribute the football via the pass and then make plays with his feet when it counts, whether it's on a designed run or it's on a scramble, something like that. It's I'm not saying this about Marcus Satterfield, so I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way. Satterfield at this point in year one is just using whatever we have on hand to put together a viable offense.
Yep.
Like, it very rarely does an offense under a staff in year one actually look like what they want to do long term. It's just, it's kind of a weird transitionary period between, what they have on hand and where they want to go. They're slowly implementing where they want to go with it. But in the case of like Frank Solich, using your quarterback as your bell cow, as in the running game like Solich did with Crouch and Lord, it's intellectually lazy as a play caller. Because when you have that bell cow, she's like, okay, just give it to them.
Yep.
You fail to build a supporting cast around you. Jamal Lord had probably one of the worst supporting casts around him in Nebraska history in 2002 and 2003. Eric Crouch was our entire offense in 2001. Darren Diedrich did chip in 1,200 yards, but a lot of that was opened up because Crouch, had the bulk of the work. And, that was still when we had a decent offensive line. But one thing that it seems like in retrospect that Frank never quite understood, and I don't want to make this podcast relitigating Nebraska history, but one thing I don't think Frank ever fully grasped was in T.O.'s offense, the quarterback was never the main ball carrier. It was always the running back. It was always the I-back. The quarterback was supplemental in nature only. It wasn't until Frost, started we started tinkering with the shotgun running game that Frost started to emerge as, like our first 1,000-yard rusher as a quarterback. So Frank kind of expanded upon that. And I know Florida did that with Tebow, but again, you had Percy Harvin, you had Chris Rainey, you had other players there to carry the load. You can't just be a solely quarterback-centric run game, or else you're going to have a guy who misses a lot of time due to injury, and your offense is going to be pretty one-dimensional.
As I'm looking at the receiving stats, I mean, Jeff Sims went 11 for 19, 114 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 sacks, 3 interceptions. That is a hell of an underwhelming line.
Not good, Bob.
Nope. Again, we talked to
Jim Ross say bowling shoe ugly.
Bowling shoe ugly. And nobody, I don't think anybody last night was tougher than a $2 steak.
I don't know. Sims was dishing out some punishment.
I mean, I'll say he stood in there and he didn't. I'm going to mispronounce his name. I'm not going to do it, but Ethan Kaliakmanis did a lot more QB surrenders. Like he slid, he got down to avoid contact. Where Sims, I think, was out looking for it.
Yeah, he was dishing out. Like, I don't want anyone to think that I'm speaking negatively of Jeff Sims. He's a hell of a player. We're lucky to have him. It's just I disagree with some of the usage, and it's easy for me to sit here from the cheap seats and say this, armchair OC this thing. It's just long-term there's implications at stake, when your quarterback is your primary ball carrier. He's just doing what he's being asked to do. In the passing game, our receivers struggled to get open. We are very thin in the receiver room. And, yet we still had opportunities there. Putting in Tommy Hill, to run, I believe it was off either an RPO or off hard play action. He's open. That ball almost got there to him, so if we look at how we use Sims in the passing game, where if he's got that much mobility, like we saw that he has, roll him out. Use him on bootlegs, scrambles. Use it to your advantage, because if you get a guy like that running, it's going to pull the secondary coverage apart. Somebody's going to come up and run support. That's going to leave somebody open. The interception right before the half where he tried to force it into drawing a blank, who was running the corner route.
Washington?
Yeah, Marcus Washington. Nate Burkitcher, it's a little snag spot concept to the boundary. Nate Burkitcher, he pops open on the snag route at the front of the goal line. he needs to be the guy that he throws.
Right.
I don't love that play call in that situation because it's such a condensed area of the field, and snag is a natural spacing concept. You're trying to force a horizontal, vertical, and oblique stretch of the coverage. So, roll them out to the other side, run sprint snag to the other side. And again, it's easy to armchair OC this thing, but those are those opportunities in film study where people see, these things and, think in the future, hey, maybe we'll do it this way.
We're getting there. We're about to talk about my biggest beef with the game and what I truly believe is the reason that we lost. But before we do that, what are you benching now, dude? I only asked that because, okay, my shirt is snug on me, but not on the chest side. Definitely on the Greg's got a beautiful belly, but you are Herbie's doing his best to keep you, to keep from stretching out like damn Stretch Armstrong. Yep. What are you doing, man?
I'm benching about 335, 345 is a 1 rep max. Squats closing in on 500.
Good. Well done.
Yeah, I know bad for somebody who's barely 200 pounds.
Well, let's just say weight has nothing to do with it, because I'm quite a bit more than 200 pounds, and it's all about how it's fit into the system there. And I don't know how much you want to get into the year that you've had on this show. I know you kind of kicked around the idea of wanting to talk about that on a very special 5 Hard podcast coming this Friday night. So you can dictate that, but I want to go back to here's why we lost. Nebraska is trying to be a physical football team. Nebraska is trying to establish themselves and their run game again. Nebraska is leading 10-3 in the fourth quarter, and first, second, and third downs, they throw the ball incomplete. That is the time to, run the damn ball, shorten the game, move the sticks, because the passing game was not working. You're putting too much of a burden on Jeff Sims. It would have been a great time to, utilize run Gabe Ervin Jr. because, as we talked about with those statistics, it was working. He was manning his way through some of those holes. He has enough speed to get outside and set the edge himself and let him get 4 yards. Let me tell you, you get 4 yards every down in 3 downs, you move the chains.
Yep. 4.
And all you got to do is shorten the game, but instead, and part of me is like, oh yes, Matt Rule and Mark Satterfield, they want to go for the throat. They want to, because they took shot. They took that shot downfield, came up empty, but that was their home run ball. That was the one that they were counting on. We're going to put the biscuit in the basket. We're going to go up 2 scores, and we're not going to have to. We're going to take the air out of the stadium. What happened was not that. What happened was they that's not the Anthony Grant fumble. I think that came earlier. But
it was on the next drive.
Thank you. They lose the ball. They have to turn over on downs. They punt it away. Minnesota goes down, scores. And I thought the last drive was the one where Sims threw the last interception.
Last drive, and then.
So maybe I'm talking about the last 3 drives, but again, if you're
it's a cascade. It's a cascade.
I'm not here
leads to another.
I'm not here to poo-poo on Anthony Grant. I mean, what he did at the beginning of last year, was a terrific addition that we needed at the time. But if you're worried about the guy's hands, maybe don't give him the ball when the game's close.
That's exactly what I thought. That's exactly what I thought when Rule in the last 2 weeks had mentioned Grant by name as somebody who's in the doghouse a little bit for fumbling in fall camp. It's unfortunate that it got clubbed out, stripped out by the defender, but he didn't have great ball security to begin with. He's not carrying it. He doesn't have that against his body with, 5 points of contact. He's kind of carrying it a little bit more out here, and there's enough space where when it gets clubbed out, it just pops out, And so the home run ball that we tried to hit to Tommy Hill, followed up by the fumble, followed up by the interception.
Yep.
3 drives right there were for 55 minutes. The play calling and, the overall game management was really good. The execution left some things to be desired, but there's a recipe. You can tell this staff has a recipe to win football games in the this isn't like watching, Mike Riley, Danny Langsdorff and Scott Frost offenses snap the ball with, 17 seconds left on the play clock when they should be taking that thing all the way down to 3 and just controlling what you can control. So it's just errors, some of them, tip a hat to Joe Rossi and the Minnesota defense. That dude has put together consistently good defenses since he got promoted in 2018.
I don't want to.
Also, we had some unforced errors.
Yeah, oh yeah.
We had some things that are totally 100% within our responsibility to prevent from happening. And so when you look at if we hit that pass to Tommy Hill, we basically choked the life out of Minnesota. If Grant doesn't fumble, there's probably a chance that we keep running out the clock, or at the very least we pick up another first down, then have to punt. And Minnesota's got to go 90 yards against our defense, in just a few minutes. And then obviously Sims, I was thinking that we might cobble together enough to go down there, drive down there and give Tristan Alvano a chance to hit a game winner in his first game as, a college kicker. So it's not for a lack of – it sounds elementary, but it's not for a lack of effort. It's not for a lack of a good plan. It's just, it's football. One team made plays, one team didn't.
You're being.
I hate to be that guy that says that.
You're being far more altruistic than I envisioned. I'm gonna say this for the 50-ish minutes, whatever, 53 minutes before this, series of series. Pardon me for the redundancy there. I thought it was a good game plan that was executed okay. I'll even say it was executed fine. But in those last 3 series, and I apologize to everybody out there listening. No, I don't. They're used to us. It was a shit game plan with shit execution.
Yeah.
And what happened was we got shit on.
I will say this. It didn't remind me of 2018 Colorado and Adrian Martinez throws a pick when trying to hit an out route to the boundary, and then that next drive, we're off the field on 3rd and 25, but Antonio Reed hits Jay McIntyre, Mike McIntyre's son, late, and then the next play they hit that bomb to Laviska Shenault. It's not that kind of dumbassery, right there. It's not 2015 BYU where we can't run the clock out and we give them a chance. That thing was a short Hail Mary. That thing was maybe 40, 45 yards. It's not like it was, some ridiculous bomb. So, there's different things, different ways that you lose a game that's like, okay, is it totally within your your locus of control? Or is it a little bit more, hey, we did something stupid, defense made a good play? Or is it, you did something really stupid, or the defense did everything to make it happen for themselves? And I know that, again, kind of it's maybe an altruistic point of view that, Greg, you're probably thinking what the hell's going on with this guy? I don't remember him being this altruistic.
I'm going to go back to the text just to see if it's there. Let's see here. See if I can find it exactly. Oh, come on now. Okay. All right. So maybe I interpreted it wrong. I'll follow on that sort. When you texted this morning before 9 o'clock, which is pretty awesome. I'm absolutely gutted this morning after the loss. I have many thoughts. I honestly thought that there was going to be a lot more piss and vinegar.
No, I'm just sad, man.
I got into the office. I worked just a couple of hours this morning because my oldest only had half day of school, so I had to go grab him. And I stopped. I dropped him off. I went to a bakery, really good donuts, and I got 3 dozen donuts. And I took 2 to my wife's office, 2 dozen, and I took 1 dozen out to my office. And one of the guys come in, he's like, "You seem a lot happier today than I expected you to be." And then that's when I told him, I'm like, "I don't know what you have." Last I heard, the game was tied. My DVR went off, and I'm pretty sure that's just how the game ended. But
I walked into work, and one of our kind of executive administrators, secretaries, for lack of a better term, she sees me as I walk in, and she goes to say something, and I was just, "Hey, I don't want to talk about it right now." I was just like, "No, not right now."
I know it's gonna.
Let me tell you, the Iowa fans that I work with were crowing an awful lot this morning for a team that we beat 24-17 last year to deny them a chance to go get their ass kicked by Michigan in the conference championship game.
See,
it feels.
This is why you need to come around more often.
It feels good to have scoreboard over those guys
for the first time in a long time.
We better get real comfortable with it.
Yeah, I forgot where I was going with that. Yeah, so most of my finger pointing honestly is at the play call in the last 5-7 minutes that Nebraska had the ball. Again, I think, pardon the cliche or the phrase or that we like, you run the damn ball, you shorten the game, and you keep Minnesota's offense off the field. Let's flip to the other side. I thought Nebraska's defense played very well, especially when I think there were more question marks on that side. But Malcolm Hartzog, I know he got beat on that touchdown catch, but
that was a hell of a move that receiver put on him.
And that was a hell of a way to concentrate. Like I tend not to give our opponents their flowers, right? But I mean, the way they really shine when they were reviewing it, they were really slowing it down. He catches the ball. He's looking back and looking down, making sure he drags that back foot all before he puts the other foot out of bounds. And I was like, damn.
Yeah, I sat there just for a second in disbelief.
Yeah.
Because real time, when that play happened, real time, I was like, oh, he's out. He's out. And then they slow it down. It's like, oh, no, he's not. But defensively, I like our defense from a scheme standpoint and from a personnel standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I want to start off with the personnel because, as everybody knows from what you were asking me earlier, I love weightlifting. And so I like the way that our athletes in the front 7 looked fluid and explosive. They didn't look muscle-bound like they did under Duval. They looked like they were athletic. They made plays. They were disruptive.
I believe your
Hutmacher looked really good.
I believe your phrase is functional weight.
Yeah, functional. Yeah, functional strength. Functional
strength. Son of a bitch, I was this close.
And Nash Hutmacher looked explosive. He did not look explosive like that last year.
Yeah.
Ty Robinson, which we can get into that ejection and just kind of the whole thought process behind when that happened. That I think
he should know better. He should know better.
He should. I think he was probably getting frustrated with the standpoint that he was getting held all game and that officiating crew is just letting it go. But Ty was playing at an All-American level last night. And I
explain that because and I'm not here to bash on him. It's unfortunate. I'm trying to find his stats if I can. Nope. I mean, what about it? Because he doesn't really show up on the stat sheet.
No, he doesn't. And but the disruption jumps off the screen to you.
Okay.
He can dominate the guy across from him, even when the guy gets hands on him to the chest plate. You saw multiple times Ty just shooting the gap into the backfield being quicker than the guy across from him. He's playing, and I think by and large, I think people on this podcast know that I'm a little bit more reserved and kind of tend towards, dare I say, cynicism on things. I kind of tend to take a realistic view on, players. He was playing like you would expect a top 10 draft pick to play.
Okay.
I mean, he was controlling the game. If Jeff Sims was the best player on the field on offense last night, Ty Robinson was far and away the best player on the field on defense last night.
So I mean, that's important because he's not, and I'm this is the first one. Like, if Jill's watching or hearing this, she's going to yell at me. But this isn't San Diego State. I mean, that's not South Dakota State. This isn't Idaho or Middle Tennessee. This
ain't Iowa, brother.
But this is a Big Ten West opponent. Like
a team that's historically put together some really fucking good offensive lines.
And
we can drop F-bombs, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's fine. I mean, it's always fine.
You kind of looked at me like, wait, what?
I just wasn't expecting it. Because it's the first one you dropped all night. And I was like, oh, that's what that sounds like again.
That's a record, 41-21. Okay.
But I mean, he'll have to sit the first half of Colorado, which will hurt.
But I will say I really like a lot of the other bodies that we have up front.
Blaze Gunnarsson, I thought, played well.
Gunnarsson might be the most prototypical NFL build on the defensive line. And he's very disruptive. It's good to see that he's fully healthy, because that was quite the recruiting coup that we had back in, was he class of 2020, I think. Elijah Judy got some quality snaps. Cameron Lenhart's going to be a very good player at defensive end. He's also, because of the nature of this conference, he's going to take some lumps against some wily veteran Big Ten offensive tackles. Let's just call a spade a spade. That was a false start on the touchdown. And because you can even see Lenhart kind of look around like, what
are we gonna?
What's going on?
Yeah.
But and then at the second level, I wouldn't be surprised if Nick Henrich got Wally pipped. If John Bullock doesn't give up that spot, because John Bullock was very athletic and disruptive from his inside linebacker spot. Luke Reimer played really well.
I don't want to come across like, and I hate to interrupt you, but I almost feel like we're taking Luke Reimer for granted because he's been here so long. He's played at a high level. He's played as a high level his entire career, I feel.
Yep. Yeah, he's just, what do you have in one of his second starts against Buffalo in 21, like 20-some tackles?
It was nuts. He went off.
Yeah. I mean, he's a very good player. You can tell that he's finally bulked up. He was always a little undersized. And, when you're going up against guards who are going to drive block you, or tight ends who are down blocking up to the second level, or fullbacks, H-backs coming through, it wears on you in the Big Ten Conference. And this looks like a Big Ten defense for the first time since probably, the 2012, 2013 defenses, they got ran all over. They could defend the pass.
Yeah.
Mike Riley's defenses could defend the run, but, they didn't really affect the passer. So this looks basically just like our first legit Big Ten defense.
Wow.
Because by and large, we've had serious problems containing Minnesota's running game. And I know people can point to it and say, hey, they lost John Michael Schmitz. They lost 3 offensive linemen. They lost Muhammad Ibrahim. They lost Tanner Morgan. They have new co-offensive coordinators. Their identity has always been to run the football.
Mm-hmm.
When they had 2 first-team All-Big Ten receivers in 2019 with, I believe, Rashad Bateman and Tyler Johnson was the other one, they still had more running. They still averaged more run plays than pass plays.
Sure.
I think it was like a 60-40 split, might have been a little bit more, give or take. And so their identity has always been to run the football. And so for us to come out there in game 1 with a new defensive staff, entirely new scheme, a host of new players across the board, and do what we did, I'm very encouraged. Now, from that, the recipe should be fairly obvious of what we need to do on offense to supplement that defense. And that is we have the strategy to be physical and own line of scrimmage and run the football. But again, it goes back to that tactical application of it. Do we want to try to be outside run, quarterback run game centric, or do we want to try to set up body blow after body blow inside with a Gabe Ervin, running the ball, and then use Sims on the edge on bootlegs option, and yes, the occasional zone read, that can be a part of our offense. But right now, that recipe has emerged. I mean, we have a really good special teams unit. Brian Bassini averaged 47.7 a kick yesterday. Ramir Johnson totally flipped the complexion of the game with that kickoff return. First one in God knows how long. I think it might have been Kenny Bell in 2013 against Penn State. I wasn't even 23 years old yet. I'll be 33 this November, Skipper.
No, and we really didn't talk about that because it was from that a little trickery that Osborne, that Nebraska got their touchdown. But I want to go back to holding the Gophers' rushing attack because they finished 55 net yards, which is the exact number that Gabe Ervin Jr. had. Think about that. And as we mentioned, Jeff Sims had finished with a net 91, including being sacked 3 times. That is a tremendous output. But that type of run blocking happens at all 3 levels. And we mentioned, all the guys up front. We've mentioned the guys in the linebacker core. But, I mean, let's spend just a few minutes here talking about that secondary. I think the secondary played really well. I mentioned Malcolm Hartzog and that great move on the touchdown that I almost forgive him for because his head had to feel like Beetlejuice with his head spinning around with that. But Omar Brown had the interception, which I feel like came along at just a good time. Again, you're building momentum in that second half. And it all stemmed from the kickoff return by Ramir Johnson. So, but you also have, I think Quentin Newsom's really coming into his own finally.
And then we still get Marquez Buford back in about week 5, week 6. He tore his ACL against Wisconsin last year in second to last game of the season.
I just, I feel like there's a lot to be positive about, and I feel bad that immediately after the game last night, I felt really negative.
Yeah. No, I did. I did too. I had that. Despite all of what I've said about all the positives to look at, I still had that feeling when that kick went through. I just was like, doesn't change anything. It's kind of a double entendre there. It doesn't change my timeline of what I thought, how quickly Matt Rule could turn this thing around. It doesn't. It also, it's like our luck didn't change. But that is a discussion where, people want to say that we are the unluckiest team in college football. We are the Chicago Cubs of college football.
Don't do that. Hurts my heart when you say that on two
levels. The whole
thing
that it boils down to is, those Dos Equis commercials, fortune favors the bold.
Mm-hmm.
Well, fortune favors the most well-prepared. And the reality is for the past 20-some years, we have not been a well-prepared, well-coached football team most times. We have done things that there are gaps in our preparation, there are gaps in our execution that open the door for other teams to find a way to win games. So, instead of just saying, hey, we're cursed, it's like, no, let's look in the mirror and let's, figure out why systemically, why we have this history of bad luck as an institution. And it stems from we have to just find a way to make it happen. It's maybe there's a collective consciousness to college football, a zeitgeist, if you will, but it's become pretty infectious to the entire program.
I want to throw this notion out there. So Jarek Shear is a newer contributor to Corn Nation, and he's been joining John and myself on the 5 Heart podcast the last couple of weeks. And so he was with us on Wednesday night for our, Minnesota preview, our season rundown predictions. And he said a lot of it hinges on Wisconsin. I'm sorry, not Wisconsin, Minnesota. He says if If we beat Minnesota, I can see us going 9-3. If we lose, I can see us going 5-7. Where, we have a little extended, week of preparation for Colorado. Obviously, coaches' team will be able to see some film on them when they take on TCU later today. And then, you have two should be no-brainers. We say that, but the last time Northern Illinois came to Nebraska, it didn't work out so well for Sean Eichhorst and then later Mike Riley, and then Louisiana Tech. But where does Nebraska go? Like, what's the new floor after the Minnesota loss? What's the new ceiling after the Minnesota loss?
Well, I will agree that I was under the thinking that if you go in there and you take one against Minnesota, that kind of confidence, that jolt to the program that it would give us, you could be looking at 9-3, where maybe your losses are to Michigan, Illinois, and one out of Wisconsin, Maryland, or Michigan State. But I really don't think that it changes that much from the standpoint of the expectation has always been just get to a bowl this year. Mm-hmm. So if we start out 0-1, we finish, 6-6. Hey, we're bowling. That's all that matters. I'm not too particularly hung up about the record this year, with the one caveat being a bowl game is absolutely critical. Like, that would do so much for the positive momentum of this program to get to a bowl this year. What I'm hung up on is –
Do you remember the last time Nebraska went to a bowl game?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I was a fresh. I just started my undergraduate degree at UNO. I got a whole ass undergrad and master's degree since the last time we were in a bowl game.
I just know it. I bring this story up a lot because I watched that bowl game on New Year's Eve from the hospital on a little iPad mini with my newborn son on my chest, and he will be 8 this December.
Oh man, it's been a minute.
Well, no, maybe that's the last bowl win. That was when we played UCLA.
Yeah, UCLA.
We lost it. We lost to Tennessee.
It was the last time we were in a bowl game.
Ugh. It's still all right. Let's go back. That's how long it's been since we had a bowl win. Okay.
I'm most concerned with: are we a better team in Game 12 than we are in Game 1?
Sure.
So if we come out like, say, for all you Iowa Hawkeye fans that like to listen to our content because you have a serious misplaced sense of jealousy, let's say we beat Iowa 27-10 on Black Friday. I'm going to wager, I guess, that we have developed into being a better team in Game 12 than we were in Game 1. That is what I'm most concerned with. Now, the one thing that really concerns me with that statement about are we better in Game 12 than Game 1 is we showed a lot of the same tendencies yesterday that we have shown for the past 20-some years. Turn the football over, untimely penalties.
Yep.
Finding a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory because, you can talk about luck all you want, but Malcolm Hartzog bites on that double move. And it was a great route that he ran. Mm-hmm. Isaac Gifford drops an interception. We get a little impatient with trying to put the game away, and we throw 3 straight passes on one of our last drives as we're coming down the stretch. Ty Robinson gets frustrated, and he gets ejected for a personal foul, roughing the passer penalty. Those are things all within our control. Mm-hmm. That's nothing that Minnesota did. Play, Malcolm Hartzog, you're already aligned, shading on the outside of the receiver. Maintain that outside shade. I know you're worried about getting beat inside on the slant because you're lined up on the outside half of the receiver. But in that situation, fade routes are generally what the offense is going to run, 4th and 10 from the high red zone area.
Right.
Play the odds, play the percentages. It's all things that are within our control. And so on one hand, that's the most demoralizing part of it, where it's like, God, it was right there, On the other hand, hey, it was all within our control. It's not like we need this, and this to go right. Hey, let's just clean this up.
When you you can change your fortune by looking internally.
Yes.
So, I was going to ask, as you said, we want to find out the real marker will be, are we better in week 12 than we were in week 1? And I have to ask, does that mean I need to have John fire up some T-shirts that say incremental improvement?
I think so. I think we are. Carol Dweck would be really happy with our incremental growth theory mentions on this podcast. But no, yeah, I mean, that is, and this is why I love year 1 of a new coaching staff, because you don't know what you're going to get quite yet. Every week's kind of like Christmas morning in a sense. And you just want to see each week be a little bit better of a gift that came before, and that, so let's say that we go out to Boulder and we truck Deion Sanders just like running backs used to in the NFL, because while that guy was a great cover corner, that dude did not like coming up and run support.
No, he did not like the contact.
Let's say, and I won't say my prediction yet. I'll leave that to the end of the show. No, I'll leave that for next week. I'm sorry.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Let's say we handily win that game, and we beat Northern Illinois and then Louisiana Tech. I was trying to remember what order they came in. And then let's say we play Michigan in Lincoln, and we play them to within – it's a similar ball game to Minnesota. Maybe a little bit cleaner, but it's a Big Ten – run the ball, play defense, the kind of game where, if you're a defender, you're getting blocked by a fullback who rattles some fillings, in your teeth. It's a 17-14 kind of game, 13-10, 17-13, stuff like that. And we're 3-2 on October 1st, our losses are to Minnesota and Michigan. I'll take it. You're 3-2 with 7 games to go. So that kind of incremental improvement might manifest itself even in a loss against a superior opponent. Now, the thing is, Michigan is the only team on this schedule that I will confidently point to on the remaining schedule and say they are better than us. And I know that probably sounds weird because Illinois beat us 26-9 last year. Purdue has beat us almost every year since 2018. You son of a bitch. I love it. Hey, I love it, man. You're drinking the Roulade.
I don't like to rebrand my beverages.
But no, like Michigan is the only one that on paper I can confidently point to and say, yeah, that's a loss right out of the gate.
Need a lot of factors to go in our favor.
Need a lot of like Jim Harbaugh gets food poisoning from a Baconator before the game.
Brilliant.
Blake Corum, he just decides that football's not for me anymore, bro. Stuff like that. But other than that, every game is eminently winnable and every game is eminently losable. That's the razor's edge that we're going to be walking. But
we've been walking that year or that edge for 8 years or
exactly.
more.
So are we going to stack success, incremental improvement week over week to get to a point where it progressively overloads to week 12 where we are a much improved team?
I think what I want to see, obviously better execution, but I want to see if the coaching staff can learn from their mistakes. I go back to, I referenced Tim Beck, and Tim Beck would call a terrific first half. And then when everything's going right after halftime, he'd be like, let's make all these adjustments nobody asked for.
Do you remember that joke that I had back in the day where I wanted to make an album cover, the Tim Beck greatest hits of Tim Beck, and do like a breakdown of the greatest play calls that he had? His offenses, beautifully constructed. They're works of art. He just didn't know how to troubleshoot them or adjust in game.
And what I would like to see is this coaching staff learn from the mistakes of this Thursday night, where if you have a lead, a close lead in a close game late in the game, maybe you're not going to start airing it out. Maybe you're not going to start giving the other team several opportunities. Maybe you will take your number one eye back, RB, whatever, the guy who's top of the depth chart. Thank you. and who's not your quarterback, by the way.
Important distinction.
And you will put the team on his back, give him the opportunity to get you there. I really do think that if they would have just, and I don't know if something happened with Gabe Ervin Jr. where he had a cramp or what, but I don't think we didn't hear anything like that. But I think that if you would have just fed him more in that fourth quarter, in the latter half of that fourth quarter, in those final drives, you walk out of there, if not a 10-3 win, maybe a 17-3 win or a 17-10 or something like that. You walk out of there with the W because you really had to start making Minnesota play from a place that they weren't used to playing from, and that's trailing. And oh crap, I'm going to mispronounce his name again.
Kaliakmanis.
Thank you. Very good. I'm not going to say great, but very serviceable at what he did.
Well, it's funny.
He threw the ball 44 times. I don't think if you would ask PJ Fleck at going into last night's game, Coach, how many times you plan on throwing the ball tonight? 20 at the most. I think that the defense, as stiff as it was, got them out of the comfort zone.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And so if you run the ball, I'm going to harp on this. I'm going to become the run the damn ball guy.
I'm going to send you a shirt.
Yes. But if you run the damn ball, you leave Minnesota with the W. I'm already old. Like, see all this gray hair, dude? Like, I keep it short, but it's gray. I'm that guy.
I'll be 33 this November. Feeling in the years.
I'm 41.
Damn, man. You old. You old.
What's up, man?
Hey, as Phil Leotardo would say in The Sopranos, 41, just a kid.
What I want is the defense to realize, or not the defense, the coaching staff to not pull the Tim back. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yep. Adopt that mentality, because if you keep running the ball, I promise you win last night.
That's where kind of that discussion about strategic, having your strategic vision and kind of dabbling back and forth in what the tactical application of that is. That's kind of what I'm referencing, where we have an offensive line that kind of struggled on functional movement on like wide zone plays and getting out and blocking, horizontally. But, you got guys like Noli at guard and Piper and Ben Scott, which we haven't even talked about the center position yet. Right. Might have to grab another beer for that one. Might have to take a quick break so I can grab another one. You have guys who are earth movers, and maybe we need to reevaluate where we're at and maybe emphasize duo or inside zone where it's a little more straight ahead, step to the defender, get vertical displacement off the line of scrimmage, and just let your back, land some body blows on the defense. So maybe, that's an area where, hey, we make adjustments based on what we have. Another area that Tim Beck really did not excel at because, if something wasn't working, he would panic and go, instead of looking at why it didn't work and troubleshooting it with slight adjustments, he would just go wholesale changes across the board. His offense is from, I was going to say half to half, but kind of more like possession to possession could look like completely different schemes. I mean, we could go from looking like, running pistol, being a pistol zone running game to looking like old school Nebraska. And then on the next drive, we're looking like, Texas Tech, Mike Leach air raid. It was a Frankenstein of offense. Yep. So that's one thing with Marcus Satterfield. This is not a Frankenstein offense of different schemes rolled together. We just need to figure out what best matches our personnel and our strategy.
I want to put a pin in the Ben Scott topic, and let's save something for Friday night for the 5 Heart. Let's just dive into it. We're already an hour in. Everybody knows, you had been a regular on the Five Heart podcast for a number of years, since 2017. You stepped in and like, we're not going to, I guess, all right, everybody, we apologize. This is going to be the sad part of the show. All right, let's just get to it right there. You stepped in when Brian Toll got sick.
Yep.
And stayed with me.
Kind of just happened. I feel I was a pinch hitter, and then like it's like, hey, congrats, you're a podcast co-host now.
And we rode together, just the two of us, for a number of years. Yeah. And then John Johnston, of course, came in. Just, I think it was supposed to be more of a one-off, but he enjoyed himself, so he became the third. Like, yeah, he's John. We all love John. But we were the tripod, as it was known. And we still talk about that sometimes. Anyway. And then you went back to school.
Yep.
And not like back to school like you had been going to school, but grad school. Like, hey man, I gotta ease off the gas a little bit. And part of it was you were just spread so thin. Mm-hmm. And so you graduated about a year and a half ago, correct?
Yeah, May of 22.
Okay, so year change.
Almost 18 months.
And you were working hard. When did you start? And you're not going to name the place you work at, but when did you start that job?
Last December.
So you spent a lot of time looking for jobs, applying, interviewing, and understandably so, kept a safe distance from what could sometimes be a volatile setting over here at the Five Heart podcast, or the other show that I'm on. And knowing full well that, and I touch basically every few weeks, but like, is this week going to be the week? Nope. Okay. I'll keep asking. Doors always open.
Yep.
And November?
Yeah.
November, you experienced a life-changing personal event. Mm-hmm. So tell us about Ray.
Yeah, Ray was, I mean, like when you talk about somebody who is your friend, and you talk about, you got, your best friend, then you got maybe, some close friends, then it's kind of acquaintances. Like Ray was like a brother to me, truly, and like I have a brother, I have an older brother, but like Ray and I were.
We don't talk about that sack of crap. No.
What?
I was joking. I was like, we don't talk about that sack of crap, brother. No.
Ray and I were like two peas in a pod, man. Yeah. Like same interest, Nebraska football, weightlifting, doing really stupid stuff, like you name it, we did it, and yeah, we became friends when we were juniors in high school in strength training class, and it was right around the time we were firing Bill Callahan and hiring Bo Pelini, and so like we were just talking football constantly, and over the, graduated high school in 2009. And, most times people go their separate ways after they graduate high school. But, we got together every weekend, watched Nebraska football still. And, when we were a little bit older and actually had money, we started going to road games. Him and I witnessed, our collapse at Northwestern in Scott Frost's first year, and our collapse in Boulder in Scott Frost's second year, and getting beat by Minnesota and 21 up in Minneapolis. And so, huge Nebraska football fan. I mean, he was an absolute diehard fan. I honest to God, probably have watched over 100 games with Ray, in the course of, our friendship. And so last November, he was in a tragic work accident, and he went into a coma for 4 days. And on November 4th, he was declared brain dead. And on November 5th, he passed away. He passed away literally just about 10 minutes before the Nebraska-Minnesota game last year kicked off. And so when I received that call right before kickoff, it was very surreal when you think of, how many years it would have been, getting together to watch the game right then and there, And so it was, this week's been a little bit of, some reflection, thinking about, Ray, and thinking about, this is the first time since 2007 that I won't watch or discuss Husker football with him. And so that being said, those people in your life that you have that bond with, I've always said, like, I'll be friends with anybody. If I like you, I like you, we'll be friends. But like, I've always joked around, if you're a Husker football fan, we're going to be even better friends, because we're going to get together on Saturdays to watch games. We're going to text back and forth about games. Might, go to games, whether it's in Lincoln or it's a road game. And so, that's one of the things that I love so much about, college football in general, being a Nebraska fan, is those relationships that you develop with people who have your similar interests, and they're passionate about the same team that you're passionate about. It's it's an identity kind of thing, as human beings, we all like to, align ourselves with people who are like-minded to us. And so, those people in your life that, you get together with to watch Husker football with, that you text back and forth about it, not to get too sappy, but, take this opportunity to tell them, what they mean to you, and make an effort. If you haven't seen them in a while, make an effort to watch the, Nebraska Colorado game together, or just a game, or, talk about, bitch about play calling over a text message, yeah. And, the other thing too is, I think anyone, when you're watching games with, friends, family members, you kind of have your own inside jokes about, Husker football, or certain players, or certain moments that were funny. Somebody freaks out during a bad play, yeah, laugh about those things. I'll give an example. We lost to Illinois in Mike Riley's first year, 14-13.
I was there.
And we decided to try to go for it on 4th and 7. And Tommy Armstrong throws an incomplete pass, stops the clock. Illinois goes down the field and scored. I think anybody who's listening to this podcast knows me well enough to know that I've never met a 4th down that I didn't like. I want to go for it on every single 4th down. Punting is for losers. It's for suckers. Be the riverboat gambler. Same thing goes for field goals. I'm getting better, but I want to forego the field goal. I want to get the touchdown. Ray was very much like you take your points. And so, like, I think we had both had quite a few beers, by the end of this game. Coors Banquet beer. And
I like how because you have your background blurry, the Coors part was blurred out. Like you can't show that.
Damn. But yeah, after the game, it's just, we watched the game with a bunch of people, and it's just him and I bitching back and forth at one another. And the best part is, it's one of those things that I kind of laugh about now. Even at his funeral back in November, somebody came up to me who was there watching the game with us, and they're like, hey, remember the take your points game? And I was just like, of course I do, because it was like, no, man, we were trying to salt the game away. You go for it every time. And it's just, you take your points. Yeah, it was just one of those things. It became an inside joke on every 4th down that we were going for. It'd just be like, hey, man, do you go for it or take your points, And so, yeah, it's after that happened last November, in conjunction with, starting a new job, I just, things kind of got busy in life. And, a lot of it was spent time with, people who were also close to Ray. His girlfriend of 5 years, Carly, spent a lot of time with her and her family through that all. And so it was just one of those times where it just felt right to kind of put, Nebraska football in the back, discussing Nebraska football in the back burner a little bit. And I was in Iowa City still for the game last year, and witnessed that, which, to quote Ric Flair, with a tear in my eye,
made you feel a little bit better.
Oh yeah, that was also the most nervous I've ever been during a Husker game. I literally was like, how are we gonna F this one up?
We are very creative.
Yeah, we almost did.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't take people, don't take the people you like to watch or discuss Husker football with for granted. You never know. And yeah, I think that's one of the coolest things about being a Husker football fan or just a fan of, any sports team. It's the friendships that you develop. I mean, I always look at it from the perspective of, my dad took me to my first game when I was about 12 years old. And I didn't really care about football before that, but it got me hooked on Nebraska football. And to this day, that's what we always discuss. Anytime, I'm around him, anytime I call him, it could be in May, and spring ball has already been wrapped up. And, we're still, talking about Husker football, what we think is going to happen in the year ahead.
So I'm here at Coronation doing the show with you. It's important to note we have never met.
No, which
in person
is weird because we've known each other for,
years,
6 years.
Which is a question I have for you off air. We'll talk. But I had the ability to finally meet our fearless leader, John Dam Johnston, last year when I was up in the Twin Cities and watched the Nebraska-Indiana game at his house with him, which was an experience. I met Brian Toll, a few times. But I'm here with you recording this on a Friday night at 10:30 because of John, because of Brian, because I knew Brian through another side, because I was saying something half coherent on Twitter one day that caught Brian's attention. He brought me onto that other side. But I'm here as a Nebraska fan because of my Ray, so to speak, and that's Josh. That's friend of the show, Josh, who was my roommate when I was up in Chadron for a few months. But I was a clean slate, man. Down in the part of Southern Illinois that I'm from, it's Cardinal baseball, it's Blues hockey. It's not Fighting Illini. It is basketball. They had the almost undefeated season when they lost to North Carolina in the championship. But football was never on the radar. So I went to Nebraska as a clean slate, and the good people of Nebraska, who were by and large Chadron State College students / employees at the time, guys like Josh, took me in and taught me the way. And that was in 2006. So I've been friends with Josh for 17 years. I have been a Husker fan for 17 years. I remember specifically, we went to a bar in Chadron called the Sinister Grin, and we watched in 2006 Nebraska USC. It didn't end great, but I had never had that community. It wasn't a packed bar, but there were 20 people there. I mean, it was a little college town dive bar type thing, so maybe it was packed. I don't know, but sitting there drinking beers and just being like, oh damn, this is what it's like to be part of something. Yep. And that's what that set the hook, right? And so I've been flopping around for any time I bring up the quote unquote glory days. I did not experience them as a fan. I don't think enough people realize that. I didn't grow
either.
up.
I've learned about them in retrospect.
I didn't grow up a Husker fan. All I remember is that when Nebraska faced Miami in the 90s, I want to say 90. Was that 94?
January 1, 95.
Thank you. All I know is that my dad was rooting for Nebraska.
Okay, good. I thought you were going to say he was rooting for Miami.
Because he didn't like, it's the regional geographic mentality, right?
Illinois is more similar to Nebraska than it is to Iowa.
Yeah, but he had that mentality of there's a heartland, there's some good old boys, not those flashy punks down in Miami. that was Dad's mentality. But I remember we were watching that, and he was hopeful that Nebraska would win. So,
good guy, Mr. Mahachko.
He is. He's I don't give him enough credit sometimes. But that was it. Like that was my only knowledge. I didn't have football at high school. I went to a junior college, didn't have football at junior college. Then I went to broadcast school for a year, and then I went out to Nebraska. I was in country, so to speak, for less than 2 weeks before I called my first high school football game, Shadron, Nebraska versus at Torrington, Wyoming. And I was like, I don't know jack shit about football. Like I knew I knew basic positions, but I remember playing not Madden, but Xbox at the time had their own NFL game. And so I was like picking up lingo from that and just like casually dropping it into the broadcast until, but it's these little, it's my story, you know, and my story eventually. So I, you know, whether or not they listen to the show, probably not, but there's a pretty famous family in Shadron, Nebraska. They're the McLeans. There's Doc McLean, there's Mrs. McLean, and then 3 of the 4 McLean boys were quarterbacks at Shadron High. 2 of them were quarterbacks at Shadron State. One of them went to a school in South Dakota. Oldest McLean is Josh, and Josh was friends with Aaron. Aaron and I are still good friends, but Aaron introduced me to friend of the show, Josh, different Joshes. So like every step, man, it all led me here. And you know, it's like anything else. Like I could still be working in Shadron, but then I wouldn't know my wife, and then I wouldn't have my kids. You know, every step is on the path to what brought me here at this time. I'm grateful for all these steps. I'm grateful for all these people. Hoss, I'm grateful for you, and I'm grateful for you, you know, sharing. You know, I know it's not always easy to talk about difficult subject matter, and tonight we had to do it twice because we had to talk about Ray and we had to talk about Nebraska. So, but you know, I'm always in your corner, man. You know, you're welcome on any of the podcasts anytime. For those of you, nobody would know this, but occasionally, Hoss and I'll just pick up the phone and call. You like not dial numbers, but you know, push buttons and talk on the phone for like a half hour, 45 minutes, something like that, and just talk about life, things like that. So that's what you mean to me.
Thanks, Skipper.
You are a tremendous person, and I'm happy for all the strides that you've taken here in 2023. I'm excited to have you back on the 5 Heart podcast on a as much as you want to come on basis. Man, I think I've cried enough for one show. What do you think?
I think so.
All right. This has been a very special Corn Nation overreaction on YouTube, on the podcasts, and we appreciate you all greatly. Make sure that, hey, thank you, computer, for your Windows security virus and threat protection notification. But we hope, hey, drop us comments. This is not live, obviously, so I'll try to go back and read the comments. And then Hoss is going to join us next Friday night, and we'll talk a little bit about Ben Scott. You got a much better memory than I do, Hoss, so don't forget. And then we will get geared up for how did you say it? That piss is going to be hot or something like that for Colorado?
Yeah, my piss will be hot for the Colorado game.
Well, at least it won't be in a balloon.
No.
Oh.
No, this one's important. Last time, or Colorado in 18 was the first time that John Dam Johnson joined us, and we became the tripod.
See, I don't. This is my brain is
eidetic memory, man.
That's fine. My brain is okay. That show's done, and everything gets flushed.
I remember some of the strangest shit.
It's great, but I'm going to make you start to do the write-ups for these articles for Corn Nation, because like I got to go be like, what the hell did we talk about? I know it was just 20 minutes ago, but what the hell did we talk about? So that's my cross to carry, my burden to bear. Hoss, you're great, man. Thank you so much. Don't hang up, because we have to have the post-production or post-recording production meeting. This is, again, coordination overreaction. Tell all your friends, leave a comment. We'll try to address them on the 5 Heart next week, where we will be back live with myself, Haas Reuter, John Dam Johnston. The tripod rides again. And that sounds like a Blue Chew ad. So I don't know how to end this one because it's not the 5 Heart, so I can't say the usual. So instead, I will just say, go Big Red.
Restore the order.